Well, good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Just want to have a little bit of a chance to talk about all our many devices. Talk about some of the things that you might have thought about after engaging with the process of unwrapping a package and finding what was in it, that kind of thing. I don't want to put you on the spot, so I'll just tell you some of the things I was thinking about, which is that...
Oh, put me on the spot. I actually want to talk about this.
Okay, good, good. So what did you think when you first got the box?
I thought it smelled. And I was trying to place the smell. You don't often get a box in the mail, and the first thing you experience is the way it smells. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I started opening the box that I realized what it was dried ink. Mm-hmm. I think it was ink that had been poured over the box before the address label was put on it. And it was flaking off. Mm-hmm. And so that I knew at that point that even though I was expecting to receive a package and it was going to have, I knew what was going to be inside of it, that the way that it was packaged was significant. Mm-hmm. And so as we do with works of art all the time, when we receive them, you open them very carefully and you take note of how it is packaged, how it is wrapped, what all of the layers are. And so I just, began to mentally note what each level was. And so after, opening the box and getting past the kind of ink that had been poured over it, there was a bit of kind of brown paper that was used as padding, removed that. And underneath that was another box that was wrapped in old newspaper. And it was a page from the New York Times, July 6, 1980. Mm-hmm. And so I did this wearing white gloves, the way that you would work with any kind of work of art. And when I got to that, I realized, this is very brittle, yellowed New York Times page. And so very carefully took that out with whatever was inside of it, carefully unwrapped it, and inside of that yellowed New York Times page was a box of DiCecco penne pasta without the pasta in it. So inside, and it seemed like a well-used DiCecco penne box. Mm-hmm. And there was, and inside of that was something else that was wrapped in what seemed like old wax paper, because it was yellow and it had a tactility to it. It wasn't. It may not have been wax paper, but it was yellowed in some kind of.
It's like architectural drawing paper.
Architectural drawing paper. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then within that was the potato. Mm-hmm. And so it was, it really underlined what would be, we're here around the holidays and there's lots of gift giving, and if you have small children, then you know, of course, that they don't open boxes quite as carefully as that.
Yes.
And oftentimes don't notice the level of care and detail that went into the wrapping of the package. They just want the thing that's inside. So it was, it made you stop and think about each one of those levels and the careful thought that went into it, but also what the details might mean. Mm-hmm.
Good. No, I'm very appreciative of your care and attention to all of those layers. For me, the aspect of sending you something, having it delivered, the mail is something that does take place by hand. It's one handed off from one person to another, and I like that aspect of the mail. And so I was very excited by that, of delivering a potato to you. We'll talk about the potato itself later, but just that aspect of the carrying by hand. But then I knew that you were expecting it, so I thought, well, there needed to be something more in the aspect of unwrapping it too. So there were many layers that you were very kindly attentive to, as well as the olfactory nature was very important. I mean, there's a layer of coffee that's underneath all of it, and then the old paper, the earthiness of potatoes that have their own smell, as well as the old box, and then the ink and spray paint and paper and glue that's gone. So there's a lot of those things that I wanted to pack into it, because it wasn't something that I could. In a way, it enacted for me the amount of time that went into each of the actions. You could slow you down by every time you got a new scent, it would slow down the action in a way. So, and then of course the kind of event and or non-event of what is the main event, which is the potato itself. So I don't know. It was funny. I when we first started talking about doing this, it's I think I told you early on that one of the pieces that was very important to me was the piece that is thrilling to see in the museum of the pile of potatoes, because it's something that I've worked with for a while. It's just the potato, and the environment of the museum is so beautiful and elegant and pristine that it just seemed to make sense to, in some ways, insert and kind of disrupt whatever. So I was thinking, well, it'd be funny to have you have one in your office or in your space somewhere. And like the first time we talked, when we were in this room, I was thinking, oh, it'd just be funny to see it somewhere here. So that's why I wanted to have you have it, but I didn't want to bring it to you. So when you got it, what were you thinking about it in terms? I mean, I loved seeing the photographs of you with the white gloves, but did you enter in any kind of like interior thoughts about sort of like, just what is it in terms of its status as art and as an object which is not made by me, but is selected and pulled out of, an ordinariness, the most ordinary thing imaginable, pulled out of ordinariness by its sort of spotlight, by being in an art context. Right. I don't know.
There were two things. First of all, receiving the package and going through that process and knowing what's inside and knowing that act was in itself meant as a work of art, reminded me of